Visit Madrid in spring. I dare you. Visit Madrid in spring and walk around the center, and then come look me in the eye and tell me it's not the greatest city on earth. I'm not exaggerating, but try it in any case and come tell me. Because I've just gotten back from a trip to Madrid and elsewhere, and I'm just going to say it. Madrid is better than Barcelona. Controversial, I know. But in Barcelona, the buildings look moldy and dilapidated, and the city's best days are far behind it. The general vibe is, maybe this used to be nice. Madrid, on the other hand, is booming. Even The Economist says so. Here in Spain's capital, which we travel writers are required by international law to describe as vibrant, the best days are right now, especially in spring. Getting off the high-speed train with Morena, there's the usual stiff breeze in Atocha. It's refreshing. There's also, as I always notice, a different quality to the light down here. It's probably due to the altitude. Madrid is one of the highest European capitals, second only to Andorra la Vella. We drop our bags at the hotel in Plaza Castilla, then walk down to Royal Thai Cusco, a favorite local restaurant. Morena is a big fan of Asian food. She claims to be Asian herself. I have some doubts about this. I always thought that Indians were just Indian, and I never really included them on my mental list of people from Asia. But the gods decorating the Thai restaurant bear a clear resemblance to the Indian ones, and I guess if you squint just right at the map, India appears to be hanging off of the bottom of the social construct we Westerners call Asia. So maybe she's right. None of that matters, though, right now. I'm just happy to be in Madrid, eating spicy chicken with basil at one of my favorite restaurants back in my old neighborhood. Going to Madrid with Morena is always interesting on another level. Her situation has changed so much since we left that although it's the same city, the experience is completely different. Walking in front of the Rodilla sandwich shop at Plaza Castilla, she tells me about the one time she spent €2.70 on a sandwich and was very disappointed because the sandwich was 3 bites of soggy bread, and in those days, for her, €2.70 was a lot of money. Or, in her words, a lot of Carrefour sardines. She was on her science grant back then, working in a lab in Tres Cantos, and didn't want to be hungry on the bus ride back home. So she decided to splurge on one of the famous Rodilla sandwiches for $2.70. Bad idea, as it turns out. Later, we're near Opera, and she recalls walking through the center, looking in shop windows and not able to afford anything. Outside Palacio Real, she remembers her first job after quitting science. I'd stand right here on the Segway, trying to sell tours for $35. I stood in the sun all afternoon for €400 a month, plus tips, which were usually nothing. Caught a lot of abuse from drunk tourists, though. That was her first experience in sales, which, looking back, was good practice and helped her get where she is today. At the time, though, it just sucked. Anyway, now she's living a different life than when we met, managing a large team at work and dropping €70 on lunch for two, like it's no big deal. Another successful immigrant hustle story. On my end, I may not be a very good tourist. A lot of the time, the sights aren't that interesting to me. If anything, they just give me a direction to walk in. The next day, Morena is working from the hotel room, and I wander off to find a new band for my Fitbit. Why not? I'm on vacation, and that's as good a plan as any. I check the MediaMarkt near Plaza Castilla. No luck. Guess I'll just head down to Barrio Salamanca and see what's up. It's the nicest neighborhood in town, and there's also a decathlon down there and an FNAC. Both are suggested by Google Maps to have Fitbits and their accessories. It's a perfect spring day when I get off the bus. Going down Calle Serrano, I see dozens of people lined up outside some shop. Luxury is lame, I say to myself. Turning left on Ortega y Gasset, I walk in front of Tiffany & Co. Good thing I'm above this whole wealth and status thing, I think. Look at those morons. Then I make a right onto some small street, and the sun breaks through the clouds at just the right angle, and it hits the immaculate facades, and I look around, and everyone, even the old grannies, is beautiful and well-dressed, and a chorus of voices in my head starts shouting, I have never wanted anything as much as I want 10 million euros and a penthouse on this street in Barrio Salamanca. The feeling only lasts for a few minutes. I'm kidding, it lasts for days. But, fuck luxury. I'll just take the penthouse and the millions of euros. I don't need jewelry or fancy clothes. It turns out to be shockingly easy to buy a new strap for an Apple Watch, but impossible for a Fitbit. After 2 hours walking around and going to every electronic shop in the area, I just order one on Amazon for next day delivery and head back uptown to have lunch with Morena. The next morning I'm down at Plaza Mayor having breakfast with my friend Donna. She's from New York, but lived in Cordoba for a while. When we sit down, she speaks to the waitress in Spanish. I hear you still have that Andalusian accent, I say. Yeah, well, now I'm dating a guy from Cadiz. Did I tell you I'm non-monogamous? I'd heard that's something the kids are doing these days, but that's going to have to be the topic of a future article, because I don't have time right now. Donna and I talk about modern relationships, and about starting an online business, and about Spain's insane tax system, which makes it nearly illegal, or at least very impractical, to have a side hustle. Finally, on the way to catch the metro back up north, I get around to why I'm here in Madrid. We've got a private tour of the Prado Museum, and then I'm going off to do La Ruta de Don Quixote on a bicycle. Oh wow, that sounds fun, she says. I was in the Prado the other day, and I couldn't stand it. I couldn't not see it through the lens of post-colonialism. I make a mental note to Google what it means to see something through the lens of post-colonialism. The paintings were all about kings showing off, she says. It was like their version of Instagram. Yeah, I say. It's weird to think how much of what we call high culture is just the product of dick-measuring contests between aristocrats from centuries ago. Instagram, of course, is mostly about status games, but so is fine art. A lot of European fine art, in fact, was just rich guys showing off. Calling it a dick-measuring contest is a bit crude, but mostly accurate. A few blocks to the left of where we're walking, Palacio Real was specifically designed to be bigger than Versailles. Around Europe, rich guys would commission composers like Beethoven and Mozart to write music, in order to impress people with their exquisite taste as well as their wealth. And the paintings in the Prado? Well, we'll talk about those in a few days. In any case, artists usually work for money, and there was no mass market back in those days. So I'm not criticizing painters or classical composers. Actually, I'd assume that even today, any painter who's actually making a living has a network of rich patrons making the whole thing possible. Who else is going to spend thousands on a picture to pay a starving artist's New York rent? Half an hour later, I'm sitting in the sun near Cuzco, just off the old Calle de Capitanaya, waiting for Morena. I used to drink wine at this bar. Now I'm on alcohol-free beer, surrounded by old ladies in fur coats and guys in well-pressed shirts and loafers. People in Madrid just dress better, and unlike in Barcelona, they don't seem to be in a competition to see who can get the most tattoos. The free tapa, that's something else they don't have in Barcelona, is a croqueta floating in salmorejo. The old guys at the next table are talking about the Battle of Lepanto. I don't know why. Miguel de Cervantes was at Lepanto, though, and since I'm currently rereading bits of his novel in preparation for my bike tour, my ears prick up. The guy in suede loafers is talking about how Lepanto was basically an infantry battle, but on boats. That is, as far as I know, true. The guy next to him, who has a full beard and well-polished tassel loafers, also has pins on his vest which suggest he might be retired military. He agrees, with the caveat that the Armada was much different back then. And like I said, I'm sitting here when another woman comes up to me. "Daniel, I'm one of your students. I have all your books." She's a retired doctor from the north of Spain. "I live here in Tetuan," she says, "and I loved when you used to say El Romantico Barrio de Tetuan in your videos." Spotted by fans in the street. That doesn't happen much these days, but it's always gratifying. Morena thinks it's weird that I spend my time meeting random strangers who contact me through the internet, but a lot of positive things have come from it, and I've yet to have a bad experience. The Don Quixote route I'll be doing in a few days was just an idea that popped up on my contact form on the blog, as was the private tour of the Prado, which is tomorrow. So if you've got any exciting proposals for me, hit me up on the contact form, expatmadrid.com/contact. Thanks in advance. The next day, bright and early, Morena and I are on bus 27, heading down to the Prado Museum. Visiting Madrid is always intense for me too, because everything has memories attached to it. Line 27 of the bus probably isn't a landmark for most people, but in my mind it's a whole Madrid institution. I'd take line 27 to and from my last job back in the day. This was before I declared victory over the Spanish labor market and just became self-employed. Every morning I'd wake up at 6:15, have some coffee, and walk outside before sunrise to catch bus 27 down to Banco de España, sort of like the Spanish Federal Reserve. There I'd wait with a few other English teachers while the trumpeter played 8 a.m. reveille at the army headquarters across the street. When my students would show up, I'd spend a couple of hours giving English lessons, then go back uptown to work on my online empire for a few more hours before my lunchtime classes, after which I'd work out, eat, and head off to the suburbs for more classes in the evening. Looking back, I don't know how I did all that. My metabolism ran entirely on alcohol, protein, and youthful enthusiasm, apparently. But it was fun, working 14-hour days so that I could someday afford to work 4-hour weeks. It all turned out both better and worse than I expected, and life, as Steve Jobs famously said, must be lived forwards, but can only be made sense of by looking backwards. So it's possible I'm constructing a narrative where there is none, and we're all just collections of atoms bouncing off each other, or brains in vats, or characters in some super advanced civilization's video game. In that final case, I feel kind of bad for the super intelligent alien who had to slog through 12 years of my formal education and 18 years of my badly paid day jobs just so I could finally get to the point where I could afford to eat steak year-round. Terrible simulation. Sorry about the shitty plot. We'll try to do better in future levels. The Prado tour starts at 9, a full hour before the museum is open to the public, and we've been invited because I'm an influencer, or so some people think. On the bus, I mentioned to Morena what Donna said yesterday. "You're from a former British colony," I say. "What have you done to decolonize your mind?" She rolls her eyes. She's never heard of decolonizing her mind, and while she won't let me publish what she actually says at this point, she'd like to state on the record that she does not identify as being any sort of oppressed person. What she actually says is hilarious and very profane. Also, the Prado is awesome. The huge halls are completely empty except for the guide and our group of 5, and we see some of the greatest art ever made as part of anyone's dick measuring contest or super advanced video game. More on that soon. For now, check out the page at Walks Tours called Alone in the Prado. It's at takewalks.com, and you can click through Find Madrid, and the Early Access Prado Museum Tour, or Alone in the Prado. It's totally worth it. This post is a bit non-chronological, not that you'd ever know with the way one section just flows into the next. In this section, my friend Andrew has just come from the gym, so he's hungry. We end up at Tierra Burrito Bar. I was just in LA, he says, and I went to Chipotle on the Sunset Strip. This is better. We talk about the spiritual journey, the experience of being self-aware, aging, meat-based robots stumbling through an alien simulation or whatever. Whatever this life really is, we've still got to make a living every month. And we both agree that a big part of the spiritual journey involves finding the thing that gets you out of bed with a spring in your step, despite being several decades into this game we call existence. You know, says Andrew, when I used to teach English, people would complain to me about their jobs. I thought that maybe with a better attitude, that'd be just fine. But now that I've got a real job myself, I understand just how soul-crushing the whole thing is. I like to think of myself as the kind of empathetic person who can just imagine how soul-crushing it is. But I haven't had a real job since I was a teenager, and I'm probably not as empathetic as I think. I nod along and raise my bottle of kombucha because alcohol-free lifestyles. Here's to victory over the labor market and to the spiritual journey. A few non-chronological days later, I'm off to Toledo for the bike tour, and several days after that, back in Barcelona. It's spring here in Barcelona too, but it's nothing like in Madrid. Our city hall up here seems to be anti-vegetation, for one thing. The whole place is dusty and dry, even though the drought emergency is officially over. Anyway, I got back a couple of days ago with a lot of material to write about. Soon we'll have more on the private tour of the Prado Museum, which you can do too, as well as my full report from cycling La Ruta de Don Quixote down in La Mancha. And I'll probably sit down to write something about modern relationships, monogamous and otherwise, when I've got a minute or two. Some of these will be accompanied by videos, some will be podcasts as well. You know, the old content creation hustle. Sign up for my emails so you don't miss out. You can just go to the blog expatmadrid.com to sign up. Thanks for listening. That's about all I've got for today. The drought emergency is over. This is a true fact. They declared it over last week. I think they were hoping that the level of the reservoirs would go above 17% or something similar to that. There was a lot of rain in April and also a lot of snow up in the Pyrenees. The snow starts melting at some point and runs down into the reservoirs, and we've got water again. So people are allowed to fill swimming pools, and, you know, that means that it's not an emergency anymore. If you will allow me to continue my ramble for a moment, the bike tour down in La Mancha was great. It was with biketourinSpain.com. I'll have more about that soon. The walking tour of the Prado, like I said, was with Walks Tours at takewalks.com. You can check that out too. They've got lots of places, but, you know, find something that you like. The Prado was amazing. In my previous episode, I mentioned that Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez had taken a few days off to think about whether or not he was going to resign. He didn't resign, so he's hanging in there for another year or two, who knows how long. We will find out. I was a bit hard on Barcelona in this episode. You can check out the other side of the story in my episode, Is Barcelona the New Austin?, which, I don't know, was 5 or 6 episodes ago. There are plenty of good things to say about Barcelona, but Madrid really had me spoiled when I was living there, and I still love it, as you can tell. Please subscribe to this podcast. Give me a 5-star review if you're on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts. Go to the website, expatmadrid.com. Donate money, expatmadrid.com/donate. You could donate €3, you could donate €300, whatever floats your boat. Any amount in between is also fine. I appreciate it all. Helps me to keep doing fun things and keep this podcast free for everyone, which I enjoy doing. You can also head by YouTube. I have a channel called Learn Spanish with Daniel. Every episode of this podcast is on Learn Spanish with Daniel. And there you can also find some videos about Spanish grammar, pronunciation, vocabulary, interesting expressions, and much more. Just go to the YouTube search and put in Learn Spanish with Daniel, and you should find me. Did I mention you can donate money at expatmadrid.com/donate? I think I probably did, but just in case I didn't, expatmadrid.com/donate. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you have a great day wherever you are in the world. Hit me up if there's anything you'd like to hear on a future episode. And until next time, hasta la próxima. Bye.